Professor Keelix adjusted his ceremonial throat sac and gazed imperiously across the lecture hall of Galactic University. His 17 eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of someone about to deliver earth-shattering news to a room full of impressionable minds. The amphitheater buzzed with excited chatter from students representing 43 different species, all eager to learn about the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Silence. Keelix bellowed, his voice resonating through his impressive collection of vocal cords. Today we discuss the most terrifying hunters in known space. Creatures so ruthless, so perfectly evolved for killing, that they have managed to completely dominate an entire sentient species. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. In the third row, a young Centaurian named Zara rolled all four of her eyes simultaneously. She'd been studying Earth cultures for her xenobiology thesis, and something about this lecture already smelled fishier than a Neptunian tidal pool. These apex predators, Keelix continued dramatically, extending one of his many tentacles toward the holographic display, have achieved what no other species has managed. Total, complete, absolute conquest of humanity. The display flickered to life, showing grainy surveillance footage of what appeared to be small, furry creatures stalking through human dwellings. Several students in the front row actually whimpered. "Behold," Keelix whispered reverently, "the fearsome Earth felines and their equally deadly counterparts, the canine pack hunters." Zara's eye stalks practically snapped to attention. "Hold on," she interrupted, her voice dripping with disbelief. "Are you talking about cats and dogs?" "Cats and dogs," Keelix repeated with horror, as if she'd just named two elder gods. Yes, these innocent-sounding names are clearly part of their psychological warfare. Notice how they've manipulated human language to make their species sound harmless, diabolical. The professor clicked to the next slide, showing a tabby cat sitting in a sunny window. Observe the predatory stance. The calculating gaze. This specimen is clearly surveying its territory, planning its next strike against its human captives. That cat is literally just sitting there, Zara muttered loud enough for half the amphitheater to hear. "Exactly," Keelix exclaimed triumphantly. "The patience of a true hunter. They can remain motionless for hours, waiting for the perfect moment to demand food, shelter, or grooming services from their human slaves." A nervous Arcturian student raised a trembling appendage. "Professor, how exactly did these creatures manage to enslave an entire species?" Keelix puffed up with academic pride. "Through a sophisticated campaign of psychological manipulation that took millennia to perfect. They convinced humans that caring for them was somehow beneficial. Can you imagine? The humans actually believe they chose to live with these predators voluntarily. Stockholm Syndrome on a planetary scale," whispered an impressed Venusian. Zara's patience finally snapped. "Or, and hear me out here, maybe humans just like having pets because they're cute and friendly?" The entire lecture hall fell silent. Several students looked scandalized at such a naive suggestion. Keelix's throat sac deflated slightly before puffing back up with renewed indignation. "Miss Zara," he said condescendingly, "your youth and inexperience are showing. What you call cute and friendly are clearly evolved hunting traits designed to lower human defenses. Those large eyes, perfect for low-light stalking. The soft fur, insulation for extended hunts. The purring sounds, obviously some form of hypnotic frequency that clouds human judgment." "Right," Zara drawled, "because nothing says apex predator like demanding belly rubs and hiding under beds during thunderstorms." But Keelix was already moving to his next slide, showing a golden retriever playing fetch in a park. And here we see pack hunting behavior. Notice how the canine forces its human to repeatedly throw objects, training the human for coordination while the predator practices retrieval techniques. The human appears happy, but this is clearly learned helplessness. "The human appears happy because playing fetch is fun," Zara said flatly. "Fun," Keelix repeated the word like it tasted bad. "Another manipulation technique. These creatures have convinced humans that serving them is enjoyable. The psychological conditioning runs so deep that humans will actually defend their captors if questioned." A Plutonian student raised her crystalline hand. "Professor, have you ever actually been to Earth?" Keelix's throat sac twitched nervously. Direct observation would be far too dangerous. My research is based on careful analysis of transmitted data and testimonials from the few humans who managed to escape. Escape from what exactly? Zara asked. From the constant demands for food, attention, medical care, and grooming services that these predators require, Keelix explained earnestly. Some humans spend their entire life savings on veterinary bills. If that's not evidence of complete domination, I don't know what is. The lecture hall murmured with a mixture of awe and terror. Zara just shook her head, already formulating her own theories about Professor Keelix's research methods. Professor Keelix clicked to his next slide with the flourish of someone revealing state secrets. The hologram now displayed a slow-motion video of a house cat pouncing on a feather toy, set to ominous orchestral music that would have been more appropriate for a horror movie. "Study this footage carefully," Keelix intoned gravely. "Notice the precision, the calculated timing, the raw predatory instinct. This feline is clearly maintaining its combat readiness through daily training exercises with diminutive prey simulations." "Those are cat toys," Zara said, not even trying to hide her exasperation anymore. "Toys," Keelix repeated with a knowing nod. "Yes, that's what they want you to think. But observe how the human provides these training aids willingly, even enthusiastically. The psychological manipulation has reached such depths that humans believe they're entertaining their captors when they're actually funding military exercises." The next slide showed a compilation of cats knocking objects off tables. Several students gasped audibly as coffee mugs, pens, and houseplants tumbled to their doom in slow motion. "Territory marking through systematic destruction," Keelix explained with academic authority. "Each fallen object sends a clear message. This space belongs to me, and I can destroy your possessions at will." Notice how the human always cleans up afterward. Classic submission behavior. "Or maybe cats are just jerks sometimes," Zara suggested helpfully. But Keelix had already moved on to what he clearly considered his masterpiece of evidence, a montage of dogs performing tricks. The footage showed various breeds sitting, shaking hands, rolling over, and playing dead on command. And here Keelix's voice dropped to a theatrical whisper. "We witness the most disturbing aspect of canine domination. They've trained humans to believe that the dogs are following orders, when in reality these elaborate performances are psychological conditioning exercises." A confused Martian student raised 3 of his hands. "I don't understand, Professor. If the dogs are obeying commands, doesn't that suggest the humans are in charge?" Keelix smiled smugly. "Precisely what they want you to think. But consider this: who benefits from these interactions? The human gives the command, and then what happens? The dog receives food, praise, physical affection, and positive attention. Meanwhile, the human believes they're the authority figure. It's the perfect crime." "So your theory," Zara said slowly, "is that dogs pretend to obey commands as part of an elaborate con to get treats?" "Not just treats," Keelix corrected urgently. "Complete lifestyle support. Free food, medical care, housing, climate control, exercise services, grooming, and 24-hour emotional availability from their human servants. All in exchange for performing simple tricks that make the humans feel important." The next slide made several students actually recoil in their seats. It showed a massive St. Bernard sitting on a couch next to a small human child, both watching television together. "Size differential analysis," Keelix announced dramatically. "This particular specimen weighs more than the human child it's guarding, yet maintains the facade of harmless companionship. One wrong move, and that child could be overpowered in seconds." "The kid looks pretty happy to me," Zara observed dryly. "Stockholm Syndrome," Keelix replied dismissively. "The conditioning begins in infancy. Humans are raised from birth to accept these predators as family members. By adulthood, they're so thoroughly programmed that they actually grieve when their captors die." The professor's presentation continued with increasingly ridiculous interpretations. A video of a cat purring while being petted became vibrational mind control techniques. Footage of dogs wagging their tails was labeled hypnotic pendulum movements designed to induce compliance trance states. "Professor," interrupted a brave Europan student, "my cousin visited Earth last year for the student exchange program. She said humans and pets seemed genuinely affectionate." Keelix's throat sac inflated to maximum capacity. "Your cousin was clearly exposed to the same psychological conditioning that affects Earth visitors. The manipulation is so sophisticated that even off-world observers can be compromised within hours of exposure." Or Zara interjected with deadpan timing, "Maybe she just saw humans being nice to animals." "Nice?" Keelix practically shrieked. "There's nothing nice about apex predation. These creatures have weaponized cuteness itself. Look at this evidence." The final slide showed a compilation of internet videos: cats in tiny hats, dogs wearing sweaters, puppies sleeping in human beds, kittens playing with yarn balls. The lecture hall fell silent as students processed this overwhelming display of alleged psychological warfare. "The humans dress them in decorative clothing," Keelix pointed out urgently. "They allow them to sleep in their own beds. They film their every movement and share the footage obsessively. If this isn't evidence of complete mental domination, I don't know what is." "It's evidence that humans think animals are adorable," Zara said flatly. "Which they are." "Adorable." Keelix repeated the word like it was profanity. "The ultimate weapon. These predators have evolved to trigger nurturing responses in their victims. It's the most successful invasion strategy in galactic history." As the presentation ended, students filed out in hushed, terrified whispers. Only Zara remained in her seat, shaking her head at the spectacular display of academic incompetence she'd just witnessed. She was already formulating her own research proposal, a field study to discover what Professor Keelix had gotten so magnificently, hilariously wrong. 3 weeks later, Zara found herself crammed into a research shuttle with Professor Keelix and 2 graduate assistants, all wearing what could only be described as the most ridiculous protective gear in the history of xenobiology. Keelix had designed the suits personally, complete with reinforced padding, electromagnetic field generators, and enough armor plating to survive a meteor impact. Remember, Keelix briefed his team through the suit's communication system: maintain minimum safe distance at all times. These apex predators can strike without warning. Do not make direct eye contact, sudden movements, or high-pitched sounds that might trigger their hunting instincts. Zara looked down at her suit's built-in laser cannons and tried not to laugh. "Professor, are we studying house pets or invading a hostile planet?" "The two are synonymous," Keelix replied with complete seriousness. Earth's surface is essentially one massive hunting preserve controlled by these creatures. Their landing site was a public park in suburban Denver. Keelix had chosen it specifically because his intelligence reports indicated high concentrations of both feline and canine activity. What he hadn't anticipated was that it was also a popular dog park on a sunny Saturday afternoon. The moment they stepped out of the shuttle, chaos erupted. Not because of any deadly predator attacks, but because a golden retriever named Buster had spotted the strangest-looking beings he'd ever seen and decided they must be new friends who needed immediate investigation. "Contact!" Keelix screamed as Buster bounded toward them, tail wagging furiously. Evasive maneuvers. The research team scattered like startled birds. Keelix dove behind a park bench while his graduate assistants attempted to activate their suit's defensive protocols. Zara, meanwhile, stood perfectly still as Buster skidded to a halt in front of her and promptly sat down, tongue lolling out in what any reasonable observer would recognize as a friendly greeting. "Professor," Zara called out calmly, "I think this one wants to play fetch." "It's trying to establish dominance," Keelix shouted from behind his bench. "Deploy the sonic deterrents." Before anyone could activate anything, Buster's owner, a middle-aged man named Tom, jogged over with an apologetic smile. "Sorry about that. Buster gets excited when he meets new people. Nice costumes, by the way. Is this for some kind of sci-fi convention?" The entire research team froze. They were face to face with an actual human, and he seemed completely unconcerned about the deadly predator sitting calmly at Zara's feet. "You're not afraid?" squeaked one of the graduate assistants through his suit's voice modulator. Tom looked confused. Of Buster? He's a sweetheart. Watch this. He pulled a tennis ball from his pocket and threw it across the park. Buster immediately bounded after it, retrieved it, and brought it back, dropping it at Tom's feet with obvious expectation. Forced labor. Keelix yelled triumphantly. See how it compels the human to engage in repetitive throwing motions. Tom laughed and threw the ball again. He just loves fetch. Been doing this since he was a puppy. Stockholm Syndrome. Keelix muttered to his assistants. Classic case. But his theory hit its first major snag when Buster, apparently deciding the aliens weren't interested in playing, wandered over to a nearby fountain and began drinking water like the most ordinary creature in the universe. No predatory stalking, no dominance displays, no psychological manipulation. Just a thirsty dog getting a drink. Why isn't it attacking? One assistant whispered nervously. Probably not hungry, Tom replied cheerfully. I fed him an hour ago. Hey, are you guys marine biologists or something? Those suits look pretty serious. We're xenobiologists, Zara said, finally finding her voice. We're here to study Earth's apex predators. Tom's face lit up with understanding. Oh, you mean like sharks and tigers? Yeah, those are pretty impressive. Though I think the mosquitoes kill more people annually than either of those. No, Keelix said, emerging cautiously from behind his bench. We mean the creatures that have enslaved your species. The felines and canines. Tom stared at him for a long moment, then burst into the kind of laughter that suggested either complete mental breakdown or the recognition of something so absurd it transcended normal humor. You think cats and dogs have enslaved humans? Haven't they? Keelix asked uncertainly, his academic confidence wavering for the first time. Buddy, Tom said, wiping tears from his eyes, you've got it backwards. We domesticated them. They're our pets. The word pets hit the research team like a sonic boom. Keelix's throat sac deflated completely. That's impossible, he whispered. But before anyone could respond, a small orange tabby cat strolled into the scene, took one look at the assembled aliens, and did something that would haunt Professor Keelix's academic reputation forever. It flopped onto its back and exposed its belly in the universal feline signal for please give me attention. Emma Rodriguez had been having a perfectly normal Saturday morning until she spotted what appeared to be a group of heavily armored aliens having an existential crisis in the middle of Riverside Park. Being the kind of person who once rescued a three-legged pigeon and nursed it back to health, her first instinct was to offer help. Hi there, she called out cheerfully, jogging over with her rescue mutt Murphy trotting beside her. You folks look a little lost. Can I help you with anything? Professor Keelix, who was still staring in horror at the orange tabby currently rolling in the dirt for maximum belly rub appeal, turned his 17 eyes toward this new human specimen. According to his research, she should be showing signs of severe psychological trauma from years of predator domination. Instead, she looked like someone who'd just finished a yoga class and was genuinely concerned about their well-being. We're conducting a field study, Zara explained, figuring someone should provide a rational response. We're trying to understand the relationship between humans and your domestic animals. Oh, how wonderful. Emma's face lit up with the enthusiasm of someone who'd found her favorite topic of conversation. Are you studying animal behavior? I volunteer at the local shelter, and I've got 3 rescues at home. Murphy here is actually my newest addition. Murphy, a cheerful mix of what appeared to be golden retriever and several other unidentifiable breeds, immediately demonstrated the terrifying pack-hunting behavior that had so concerned Professor Keelix by sitting politely and offering Emma his paw. Good boy, Emma praised, reaching into her pocket for a treat. He's still learning basic commands, but he's such a sweetheart. Commands? Keelix's voice cracked slightly. You give it commands? Well, yes, Emma said, looking puzzled by the question. Sit, stay, come down. Basic obedience training. It's important for their safety and socialization. The professor's entire worldview began to crack like an eggshell. But our research indicates that the canines are the dominant species in the relationship. Emma stared at him for a moment, then burst into delighted laughter. Dominant? Murphy's scared of the vacuum cleaner and sleeps with a stuffed elephant. Here, watch this. She pointed at Murphy and said firmly, sit. Murphy sat down. Murphy lay down, tail still wagging. Roll over. Murphy executed a perfect roll, then looked up expectantly for his reward. The conditioning appears to run both ways, one of the graduate assistants whispered in amazement. It's not conditioning, Emma explained patiently. It's training. Dogs are pack animals. They're happiest when they understand their role in the family structure. The commands give them security and purpose. Family structure? Keelix repeated weakly. Of course. Murphy's part of the family. Aren't you, buddy? Emma scratched behind Murphy's ears, causing his back leg to thump in obvious pleasure. We take care of each other. I feed him, exercise him, keep him healthy, and he provides companionship and unconditional love. Unconditional love, Zara repeated thoughtfully. That's an interesting concept. It really is, Emma agreed warmly. Dogs don't care if you're having a bad day, if you're rich or poor, if you're popular or awkward. They just love you for being you. It's pretty amazing, actually. The orange tabby, apparently deciding the conversation had gone on long enough without proper attention, began weaving around Emma's legs and purring loudly enough to be heard through the alien's helmet speakers. Oh, hello there, gorgeous, Emma cooed, bending down to pet the cat. You're not mine, but you're certainly friendly. Friendly, Keelix whimpered. Very friendly, Emma confirmed as the cat flopped over again, purring like a tiny engine. Cats show affection differently than dogs, but they're just as loving. This one's probably someone's outdoor cat, just making the rounds for attention. Making the rounds for attention, one graduate assistant repeated in wonder. Sure, cats are social creatures, despite what people think. They form strong bonds with their families. My cat Luna follows me around the house like a furry shadow. She even sits on my laptop when I'm trying to work. Sabotage, Keelix whispered hopefully. Attention-seeking, Emma corrected with a laugh. She wants pets more than she wants me to be productive. Murphy, not to be outdone by the cat, rolled onto his back and presented his belly for rubbing. Emma obliged immediately, causing Murphy's back leg to pump in pure bliss. And this behavior? Keelix asked desperately, pointing at the belly rub session. Trust, Emma said simply. When dogs show you their belly, it means they feel completely safe with you. It's the highest compliment a dog can give. Professor Keelix's academic universe was crumbling faster than a poorly constructed sandcastle. Every piece of evidence he'd collected, every theory he'd developed, every paper he'd published was being systematically demolished by a cheerful human and two animals who seemed more interested in affection than conquest. Would you like to meet the rest of my pack? Emma asked brightly. The research team exchanged nervous glances through their helmet visors. The rest? Keelix croaked. I'm heading home for lunch. You're welcome to come along if you want to see how the whole family dynamic works. Fair warning, though, Luna can be a bit standoffish with strangers, and my old boy Chester mostly just sleeps these days. Zara looked at her trembling professor, then back at Emma's genuine invitation. We'd love to, she said firmly. Emma's house was exactly what Zara had expected from their conversation, comfortable, lived in, and absolutely overrun with evidence of interspecies cohabitation. Pet beds occupied strategic sunny spots. Toy baskets overflowed with squeaky entertainment, and the refrigerator was covered with photos of humans and animals in various states of domestic bliss. Professor Keelix and his team entered like bomb disposal experts approaching an active device. Their sensors were going crazy, detecting what their equipment interpreted as multiple life forms in an aggressive hunting formation. The reality, of course, was 3 pets lounging in their respective favorite spots. Everyone, we have visitors, Emma announced to her household. Luna, a sleek black cat with green eyes, lifted her head from her perch on the windowsill, assessed the heavily armored aliens with obvious disdain, and went back to her nap. Chester, an elderly beagle with graying fur, opened one eye from his position on the couch, decided the newcomers weren't interesting enough to warrant movement, and resumed snoring. Murphy, still energized from the park, performed his signature trick of spinning in a circle twice before sitting politely. Tactical positioning, Keelix whispered to his assistants. Notice how they've established sight lines and escape routes throughout the territory? They're napping, Zara pointed out. Feigned vulnerability, Keelix countered weakly. Classic ambush behavior. Emma, oblivious to the professor's mounting psychological crisis, moved through her home with practiced ease. She refreshed water bowls, tossed Murphy a rope toy, and gave Luna a gentle scratch under the chin as she passed. Each action triggered increasingly frantic commentary from Keelix. Tribute offerings, territory maintenance, submission grooming. I'm just taking care of my pets, Emma said patiently. Like any pet owner does. The breaking point came when Emma started preparing lunch. Not just for herself, but for all three animals. She measured out specific portions of food, added supplements, and even warmed Chester's meal because his old teeth were sensitive to cold food. The feeding ritual, Keelix breathed, watching this display with the fascination of someone witnessing their own academic execution. They've actually convinced her that providing specialized nutrition is her responsibility. Because it is, Emma replied matter-of-factly. They depend on me for food, just like I depend on my job for income. It's a relationship based on mutual benefit and care. But you're doing all the work, one graduate assistant protested. Am I? Emma asked with a smile. Murphy alerts me when someone's at the door. Luna keeps the house free of mice. Chester provides excellent foot warming services during winter. And all three of them make me laugh every single day. That's not work, that's partnership. As if summoned by the word partnership, Murphy approached Professor Keelix and performed the ultimate act of species betrayal. He gently nudged the alien's armored hand with his nose and looked up with hopeful brown eyes. It's trying to establish pack bond, Keelix whispered in terror. He wants you to pet him, Emma translated helpfully. I couldn't possibly. The protocols clearly state that direct contact could result in immediate psychological compromise. But Murphy was persistent. He sat down directly in front of Keelix and executed the most devastating weapon in any dog's arsenal, the head tilt. Combined with his soulful eyes and slightly floppy ears, it was a display of pure, weaponized adorableness. Oh no, Keelix whimpered as his hand began to move involuntarily toward Murphy's head. The conditioning effect is stronger than anticipated. The moment Keelix's gloved hand made contact with Murphy's fur, the dog's tail began wagging with such enthusiasm that his entire back end wiggled. The professor stared in fascination as Murphy leaned into the contact, clearly enjoying the attention. How is this possible? Keelix asked in wonder. According to my research, this creature should be asserting dominance, not seeking affection. Because your research was completely wrong, Zara said gently. Dogs aren't trying to dominate humans. They're trying to be part of human families. Emma nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. Dogs evolved alongside humans for thousands of years. They're not our conquerors, they're our partners. We bred them specifically to be companions. Bred them? Keelix's voice was barely audible. Selective breeding, Emma explained. Humans guided their evolution to enhance traits we found useful or appealing. Loyalty, intelligence, specific working abilities, even just cuteness. We literally created most modern dog breeds. The implications hit Professor Keelix like a collapsing star. You mean humans are responsible for their current form? Completely responsible, Emma confirmed cheerfully. Same with cats, though they're more recent additions to the family. Keelix slowly straightened up, his hand still absently petting Murphy. So these creatures aren't apex predators who conquered humanity. They're apex predators that humanity conquered? Not conquered, Zara corrected. finally understanding the beautiful truth of it all. Befriended. The professor's throat sac gave one final, defeated wheeze as his life's work crumbled into cosmic dust. The faculty lounge at Galactic University had seen many academic disasters over the centuries, but Professor Keelix's return from Earth had achieved legendary status in the span of just one afternoon. Word had spread quickly about his spectacular research failure, and the emergency faculty meeting had drawn quite a crowd. "Let me understand this correctly," Dean Vorthak said, her tentacles twitching with barely suppressed amusement. "You spent 15 years developing a theory about Earth's apex predators enslaving humanity, and it turns out you were studying household pets." The terminology was clearly misleading. Keelix mumbled, slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. His protective suit had been replaced by academic robes, but he still looked shell-shocked from his encounter with actual reality. "Misleading how?" the dean pressed. Zara stepped forward, holding a datapad containing her hastily compiled field notes. "If I may, Dean Vorthak, I'd like to present our actual findings." The assembled faculty turned their attention to the young student who'd somehow managed to salvage a research mission from complete catastrophe. Zara activated the holographic display and began what would later be recognized as the most important presentation in xenosociological history. "What we discovered," Zara began with confident authority, "is that humans have achieved something unprecedented in galactic civilization: voluntary interspecies symbiosis based purely on mutual affection." The room buzzed with interest. Voluntary interspecies relationships were theoretical concepts, not documented phenomena. The creatures Professor Keelix identified as apex predators are actually domesticated animals. Humans selectively bred them over thousands of years, not for conquest, but for companionship. They deliberately enhanced traits like loyalty, playfulness, and emotional sensitivity. "Impossible," huffed Professor Grimlix from the theoretical xenobiology department. "Evolution doesn't work that way. Species compete, they don't collaborate." "Humans made it work that way," Zara replied smoothly. "They figured out how to redirect predatory instincts into cooperative behaviors. Instead of hunting humans, cats hunt mice that threaten human food supplies. Instead of forming wild packs, dogs integrate into human family structures and provide security, assistance, and emotional support." She clicked to her next slide, showing video footage Emma had shared of her daily routine with her pets. The images were a revelation: humans and animals living in obvious harmony, sharing space, resources, and affection without any signs of dominance or submission. "But the humans provide all the resources," protested another faculty member. "Food, shelter, medical care. How is this not exploitation?" "Because the animals provide emotional and psychological benefits that humans value equally," Zara explained. "Companionship, stress relief, unconditional affection, entertainment, and even health benefits. It's a trade relationship where both species benefit." Professor Keelix finally stirred from his academic catatonia. "But my calculations clearly showed resource expenditure patterns consistent with tribute payments." "But you interpreted pet care as tribute," Zara said kindly but firmly. "When humans spend money on veterinary bills, they're not paying protection money. They're investing in the health of family members they love." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If Zara's analysis was correct, humanity had achieved something that most galactic civilizations considered impossible. They'd turned potential predators into willing partners through nothing more sophisticated than kindness and patience. "Miss Zara," Dean Vorthak said slowly, "are you suggesting that humans domesticated these species through affection?" "I'm suggesting that humans proved something we never considered possible," Zara replied. "That evolution can be guided by love instead of fear." The faculty erupted in excited chatter. Papers would be written, theories would be revised, and entire departments would need to reconsider their fundamental assumptions about interspecies relationships. Professor Keelix, meanwhile, was having his own quiet revelation. "I suppose," he said softly, "this means my research position is in jeopardy." "Actually," Dean Vorthak said with a calculating gleam in her eyes, "I think we need to establish an entirely new department." Comparative domestication studies, perhaps? With Miss Zara as the founding chair. 6 months later, Zara was settling into her new office when a package arrived from Earth. Inside was a photo of Emma's family, including all 3 pets, and a handwritten note: "Thought you might like to meet the newest addition to our pack." The photo showed Emma holding a small kitten with markings remarkably similar to the orange tabby they'd met in the park. At the bottom of the photo, someone had written, "Professor Whiskers sends his regards." Zara laughed and pinned the photo to her bulletin board, right next to her acceptance letter for the Galactic Peace Prize in Xenobiological Understanding. Below that was her favorite acquisition from Earth: adoption papers for a rescue cat named Newton, who was currently napping in a patch of artificial sunlight by her office window. The greatest apex hunters in the galaxy, it turned out, had conquered the universe one belly rub at a time. And honestly, Zara thought as Newton stretched and yawned, that was probably the best kind of conquest possible. After all, who could resist those eyes?